Hello everyone and welcome back to the Great Book of Grudges. My name is Nathan and today we're going to be talking about the High Elves. This is the race that everyone's pretty much expecting in the next DLC alongside Slaanesh. This is because Slaanesh vs High Elves is an incredible matchup that has been known throughout the lore for many years, and it would be a massive shame not to have this matchup up and running. Now, it's a pretty interesting spot here because the High Elves have actually gotten a decent amount of content over the years, a lot of DLC, some FLC also. They're in a pretty good spot and most of their roster is fairly complete. However, they are missing a few things here and there, and it's just a small amount of stuff which would basically finish them off. They, as a race, are in a pretty good spot too. What they do need is a overarching rework just to kind of bring them up to Game 3 standards, and yeah, pretty much golden. Now, I think a lot of people know where I'm going with this with the whole High Elf situation. There is one character that really sticks out like a sore thumb, so let's talk about this, let's jump right in. But before anything, a big thank you to our sponsor, Instant Gaming. Instant Gaming is a platform where you'll be able to buy some games at a discounted rate, even as they've just released. Christmas is now over, and it's about time you treat yourself, because you've probably been giving out a lot of gifts to everyone else. Money's a little bit tight this time of year, understandably, but a good discount goes a long way. So you can pick up something like Frostpunk 2 for 46% off, maybe pick up Path of Exile, which seems to be doing very well. I have been trying to learn that game, but oh my god, it's a bit different to most ARPGs for my smooth brain. Not only that, but we do have a giveaway going on. Win the game of your choice. You don't have to make a purchase with it. All you have to do is click on the link in the description below, sign up to the giveaway, and there you go. Instant Gaming has been a platform that I have teamed up with for a fair amount of time this year, and it's always good to team up with a platform that I myself use. As you can imagine, I've spent most of my money on Warhammer miniatures, so any little disposable income that I might have to buy a game, usually I need to pick up on a discount. Yes, I'm addicted, we all know that. But with that being said, thank you once again for the sponsor. Let's get back to the regularly scheduled programming. Okay, so we're going to jump in straight to the possible legendary lords, because this is a character that I think everyone's been asking for. Sea Lord Aisling is a character which never really had a miniature, however was represented in the lore in various different mediums, even the card game too. And he had an army themed around him, just not a model, during the Storm of Chaos campaign, a campaign which is near and dear to many people's hearts, but it's very weird that he didn't have a miniature back for that either. Now, the Sea Lord leads the Lothern Sea Patrol, so he leads the High Elven Navy in a sense. He goes around, goes to different High Elven colonies, makes sure that everything is fine. He keeps the ocean safe, keeping in mind that, yeah, you know, the ocean is full of not only stuff like Dark Elves or Chaos Navies, but there are loads, and I mean loads, of sea monsters deep within the depths. Giant sharks, krakens, sea dragons, and loads of weird stuff, to be honest. You know how unsafe the general land for the Warhammer world is? Well, the oceans are nowhere near safer at all. So the benefit of this character is he's long-traveled. He can literally be anywhere, and that is a very strong thing because way too much is happening in Orth 1 at the moment, especially, you know, all the high elves and characters. Another character there would just be too much. It could also be safely assumed that he could end up having some sort of pseudo-horde to represent his fleet moving around, something that might only be active within the oceans, which would be kind of cool to see something that we've already had but working in a very different way. You know, what Lokier should have had, except he has a unique Black Ark that follows him around, which is a bit disappointing, to be honest. So this is a character that would focus very heavily on range combat, skirmishing combat, what essentially is called the Lothern Sea Patrol. Now, we do have the Lothern Sea Guard already, which would maybe get big discounts. They would end up being your core troop, as if they weren't already, right? They're really good because they're spearmen with shields and also have bows. Now, you've seen on screen there is no model to represent him. There is new art, though, so this has been fairly recent, created by Cubicle 7, with a brand new heraldry and everything. I imagine that this is going to be the big thing that kind of confirms him. Not only that, but Games Workshop themselves have been hinting merworms for Warhammer the Old World, so it kind of makes sense that all three of them are kind of linking up. This is something that we've been seeing more and more with recent DLCs, so I really do think we're going to see this new design represented in Total War Warhammer also. which is going to be kind of cool. I'm looking forward to this. The art is awesome. When it comes to the mechanics, I don't know how it could actually work. Maybe it'll be something focused around going to all the different High Elven colonies, re-establishing them, and just keeping the sea safe. Or maybe he'll start focusing around attacking some Norskins, because there's a lot of lore of him against the Norskins, interestingly enough. But I'd like to see some focus between him and the Slaanesh faction if it ends up being the Child of the Denied, as she'll be hunting down High Elves, and it just kind of makes sense to have him showing up, maybe going, okay, we need to stop her because she is causing a lot of problems. As a possible start position, we've already got it. It's the High Elven colonies near Ind. It's those islands which nothing really happens. I could see that there because it's a character that could start off there and start moving around. He could be anywhere, but it would be nice to have a High Elf start fairly far away. It's very close to Teclis, however, but I don't think there's any other location where we could see him start. It could be that we could see him start in Grand Cafe, or maybe at this point we can start seeing the opening up of Ind and Koresh, which would be very lovely, even for just some minor generic factions. But the colonies are there, they might as well get used. There needs to be a bit of a change though, because right now the AI doesn't know how to react there. It's not just a minor faction. If you put any other faction there by itself, they'll just kind of stay there. It's like they can't really think. And I think it's because it's so isolated. This is why Ind needs to be opened up a little bit so it can allow for movement around that area. And yeah, it's just going to be better for everyone if we can start seeing the map getting expanded a bit, because it's starting to feel really, really congested, which is understandable when you're getting 4 legendary lords each DLC cycle. It has been slow for the DLCs lately, let's be very, very clear there, but still, that means that we've had 8 characters pop up last year, and it does actually feel like the map is getting a bit too squished. Alright, so now we have to talk about legendary heroes, and there's basically 2 characters that I could see happening. There's a bunch of characters missing for the High Elves, but 2 of them are the more recent ones. One being Korhil the White Lion, which I really don't want as a legendary hero. I think everyone wants him as a lord. We did have a character come in and kind of replace him though, which was Alistair the White Lion. That was because of the whole Make-A-Wish situation. But Alistair doesn't really lead a faction, which is a shame. You can pick him up when you're playing as the High Elves, but, you know, a lot of people wanted a Shrace faction to play around with. The other character is obviously Caradrian, which is the captain of the Phoenix Guard. So both of these characters are quite cool because one's focused on, you know, the White Lion troopers and so on, while the other focuses more on the Phoenix Guard. They're still very, very good fighters. I think in general, people might want Caradrian a little bit more, mostly because Korhil should be leading his own faction. We don't know what Creative Assembly would be doing here. There's some other characters, obviously. I mean, there was a named character who used the generic model during the Island of Blood. That was the whole Skaven versus the High Elves. It was a fantastic box, which so much so, Games Workshop repackaged it for the first edition for Age of Sigmar and called it the Spire of Dawn, I believe. But I think these 2 characters have the opportunity of becoming a legendary hero. Hey, in a perfect world, maybe they'll go, okay, we couldn't think of anything, let's just make one a lord. But the High Elves do need a legendary hero at the moment. So I think Caradrian is probably going to be the choice here. And my reasoning here is we're slowly moving into End Times content now. And Caradrian does have a little bit of stuff to do during the End Times, so he's kind of topical for that matter. It sets the scene a little bit, plus, I mean, a lot of people use Phoenix Guard. It'll give you a reason to use more Phoenix Guard and Phoenixes. It's very difficult to come up with a hero for the High Elves, I think, at this point. Mostly because they weren't really good on the tabletop either. Whatever we end up with, I just hope it's something that has a few uses. A lot of legendary heroes recently have been really, really good. It would be nice to see it for multiple factions. Ever since they brought in Kasich, I'm always kind of worried that it's just going to be a hero attached to one faction and that's it though. Alright, now we have to talk about the roster, and this is where things can get a little bit interesting, because it's generally 1 lord, 1 hero, and then around 5 units. Sometimes it's a little less, sometimes it's a little more. It very much depends on the faction or race getting a DLC. I don't think anything is going to be any different here, but there's a few things that could come into play here, right? So there's a few different options here. The first one being an actual lord choice from the tabletop, the Anointed of Asuryan, which is essentially just a Phoenix Guard lord. I don't know how exciting that would be for a lot of people. I think a lot of people will just kind of switch off at that. I mean, we already have princes, so we've already got a melee lord, and we do have a princess, which is a melee range specialist, actually. So what I'm thinking is instead a hero option being elevated to Lord. So the Lothern Sea helm is a generic character, as you can see. It's got a spear, well, it's actually more of a trident, but it counts as a spear, and it's just got a shield. It's a very classic model. I think a lot of people are really into that one, mostly because it's attached to a different mount option, which we can imagine seeing in this DLC. I could see the Sea helm being introduced as a hybrid type character, support character as a Lord option. We've been seeing support Lord options come in, obviously with the Paymaster and the Blood Speaker recently, so I think that's something that could happen. This gives you a bit of everything when it comes to the Elf Lord options, and I think, honestly, the more I think about it, it just works out very, very well. They could end up calling it a Sea Lord, but I feel like that would take away from Sea Lord Aisling, you know, that's his title too. And it would just be a bit of weirdness there. It's not really confusing or anything, but I feel like Creative Assembly would actively avoid having the same title on a legendary lord and also on a generic lord option. So I think the Sea Helm works unless they come up with a different name. We're going to have to wait and see, obviously, if the High Elves end up being part of the next DLC. The thing is, it gets kind of weird here, because obviously if they're focusing on the Storm of Chaos, which it does seem that they do have fair good access of it, they could end up giving us a spellcaster generic lord in the form of the Mist Mage, which would have some nautical themed spells, or just leave that as a hero when it comes to the Mist Mages actually being a hero option, which could work out quite well. Put the Sea Helm as a lord, have a brand new Lore of Magic, which would be kind of similar to the Lore of the Deeps, but a little bit different too. They've never really been represented on the tabletop. It was kind of like kit bash your own, but I feel like a lot of people really do like the new Laws of Magic. Though, mind you, the High Elves have access to, 9 laws, the 8 color laws in High Magic, and most people just go for the same 2 laws over and over again. So I'm not too sure how they could see the value on that. When it's a new race, yeah, it's very exciting. When it's not, it kind of falls around there. Personally, I would like to see a new Lore of Magic come in, something a little bit exclusive to the High Elves, because they share so much with every other race. So this would be a bit of uniqueness. It does screw over the Lizardmen in the future, as there's no, Lore of the Slann or anything, but I feel like this could work out quite well. Melee support character, which also has access to some range, so a bit of a hybrid of everything, for the Lord option, and a spellcaster, which its magic is going to be buffs and debuffs mostly. I mean, it was only 2 spells, Writhing Mist and Mistress of the Deep, but I could imagine some new spells being created. If the rumors are true that we're going to see the Lothern Sea Patrol when it comes to Warhammer the Old World, there could be some spells there. I mean, it could be nice. Or, in a different sense, the Mist Mages could actually end up working in a very similar sense to that of, Warrior Priests, using active effects rather than the Winds of Magic, which would be kind of cool. I don't know. The roster for the High Elf Sea Patrol and the Storm of Chaos campaign wasn't great. Keep in mind that most of the stuff in the Storm of Chaos was just pretty much kit bash units. We've gotten some in the future, obviously we got in the DLC, which gave us the Changebringers. I don't want to see a lot of kit bash units in this DLC. I think that's a big reason why Gorbad kind of struggled with the hype meter with a lot of the fan base, and we've already got kit bash units in another DLC for the High Elves, the whole Elfarian stuff, the Mistwalker units. So it does get a little bit complicated here, because we do already have a bunch of these things already in game. Lothern Sea Guard, the Repeater Bolt Thrower. But as you can see here, when it comes to the Ship's Company or the Sea Rangers, those aren't unique. And that's a bit of a shame, because, I mean, they basically just say, it's oh yeah, just use Shadow Warriors for the Sea Rangers, or some basic High Elves for the Ship's Company. We've already got that. They bring nothing new to the table. But we do have some unique units, the first one being the Merworm, and that's something that I think we can all expect. It's a big monster, every DLC needs a centerpiece, and, I mean, what better than what actually works alongside the Lothern Sea Patrol and most of Orth-1. They are giant primordial creatures which protect Orth-1. It's a deal that they do have. Sea Lord Aisling has been known to summon them too. They're massive, they're fast, heavy damage, they can regenerate, they've got scaly skin. I like them. They're aquatic also, by the way, too. They're very, very cool for that. I mean, there's no other big centerpiece that the High Elves can have, considering that most of the dragons, actually all the dragons look the same. So this is going to be the big one that I think a lot of people could be hyped for. Some basic work has already been done for them, because technically we do have a Merworm in-game already, Aminar, which we see in a very brief way, kind of with the last battle for the Vampire Coast. Obviously those textures would have to be redone a little bit just to actually fit on a proper rig and animation, so it can actually be a proper unit. I think a lot of people would like this. It's very different to what you'd normally expect for the High Elf stuff, but it is attached to the High Elves. Alongside that would be the Lothern Skycutter, which I could see being implemented twice, 2 different versions. Well, technically 3. So Lothern Skycutter is a flying chariot. I think a lot of people want this because it's one of those models which were always so impressive to see on the tabletop. It wasn't too great, but mind you, there were better things to use with the High Elves. Let's be very honest there. But you could have 2 different versions. You could have them with just the bows, or you could have them with an attached bolt thrower. So this is a flying artillery piece. There'd be a 3rd version there too, which would be a mount option for Sea Lord Aisling and whatever your new Lord and Hero option would be. Some people might be like, well, that's a bit much, but the idea here is it's a big boy, and I could imagine this coming twice. I'd rather it being 2 or technically 3 with the mount option, but the mount option doesn't count as the 5 units, by the way. Yeah, I'd rather 2 of the same, technically, units, 2 different versions of it in the same DLC, rather than what happened with Gorbad, where we ended up getting the Ragnarok Spider a second time, and the Black Orcs a second time, which not a lot really was needed and changed there. I could see us, there's a hypothetical here, potentially not getting either a generic Lord or a generic hero, and then getting a second legendary hero. That's something that we've been seeing, obviously, with the Khorne side of Omens of Destruction, where they just didn't have a generic hero option, and they decided, okay, let's do another legendary hero. Then, in that case, we could end up seeing, both Korhil and Caradril, maybe someone else. I'm not against that. I'm honestly not against that. I think it's a good thing. I think it's a good thing ultimately what happened with Khorne. I just don't like the fact that they went with that specific character as a legendary hero. But yeah, if Creative Assembly can't figure out what to do for a generic Lord or a generic hero, I am more than happy to get another legendary hero coming in. We've already got so many options with the High Elves, it's not that bad. I know someone's going to be arguing with me in the comments below, but hey, think about it realistically here when it comes to the High Elves. But now we're thrown into a very strange dilemma, because we're missing units, right? Where we could actually go back to this unit roster, the stuff from the High Elf Sea Patrol, and potentially see something coming out here. Like the ship's company could be turned into swordsmen. Maybe counting them as heavy swordsmen with hand weapon and shield, because interestingly enough, I've just gone back to the High Elf roster. It's been a long time since I played High Elves, and they don't have a frontline defender unit like that. Mostly it's just spearmen and spearmen with shields, swordmasters, a few different units, but they're missing that. I guess the Faith Bearers kind of do that, but they're only available to address. So yeah, the swordsmen kind of are missing from the High Elves. They could do something and make something very interesting with the remaining units. It's very odd here, right? Lothern Sea Rangers could come into effect, giving them additional hand weapons, kind of similar to the Shadow Warriors, but no range weapon whatsoever. I think something that could work well. There needs to be something unique. The problem is that the elves are practically done. You can check any missing unit lists. It's a massive issue here, but that's because the High Elves got so much attention over the years. I don't imagine that we'll see anything new. This is mostly because there's been a weird divide with other IPs, right? Like, we can use end time stuff now, but apparently no Old World, because it's weird. Even then, I don't think the High Elves actually got much for Old World, but you never know for the future. In the possible future Arcane Journal, maybe they come up with something else as a big surprise. Or they might use the Sea Rangers and the ship's company as reskin units, but justify it with a full unique lore of magic. And I think they will be able to justify a full unique lore of magic with some extra reskin units, because it requires a lot of work to create new magic. It's new testing, it's the whole DB thing, it's the visuals. There's a lot of work that goes into magic as a whole. But I don't know. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I wanted to talk about the High Elves today because I've been like talking and thinking about High Elves recently. Games Workshop yesterday in the Old World article mentioned High Elves are coming soon, and I'm like, oh my god, I have to start painting my High Elves. And I am so behind schedule because I was sick, and then before that I was injured. So yeah, now I have to paint one of the most hardest armies to paint for Warhammer Fantasy and Warhammer the Old World. So yay me. Have a great one, guys. I'll see you all again very, very soon.